So just want to be able to make sure that okay. So good morning, everybody. I just wanted to thank Rafi for coming up to Thornhill this morning to make this presentation. This is going to be recorded so other people will be able to watch it in the future. I got to know Rafi based on his online persona. He runs a social media group about Techeiles, and he impressed me immediately as being extremely knowledgeable about everything having to do with this mitzvah of Techeiles. He's knowledgeable about the different methods of tying, about the methods of dyeing, and also about all of the different halachic discussions revolved around Techeiles. It's become his, almost I guess you could say, his primary focus perhaps in his Jewish life, about promoting this mitzvah. And it's something that is very dear to me, because I very much believe that in every generation, Klal Yisrael is given new opportunities. Our generation has been given the opportunity to rediscover this mitzvah. We're not the first generation. It started already in the 19th century with the Ratziner Rav, and has gained steady traction, especially after the doctoral thesis of Rav Herzog, of blessed memory, and has only progressed from there. And so it seems that while we do not have consensus among the Gedolei HaPoskim today as to whether what we have is the correct Techeiles, but the majority are of the opinion that you lose nothing by wearing this Techeiles. And therefore, as I was telling someone over Shabbos, I'd like to be able, after I've lived 120 years, to go up to Shemayim. When they ask me, you had Techeiles in your generation, did you take advantage of that mitzvah? I'd like to be able to say that I did. And that's why I'm very grateful that we have such local talent here as Rafi, and we're going to pass it over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. So, for an intro. So welcome. You're here to hear about Techeiles. We'll be focusing on a few topics, but it's going to be a general overview from A to Z or A to Z, based on what the crowd prefers to hear. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I mean, I went to Vimeo Talmud, Torah Land College for Men, class of 2005. Received my master's in information systems at the Stevens Institute of Technology in 2015. I'm a web developer, web programmer, digital marketer by profession, but I've been a major enthusiast about Techeiles and everything from soup to nuts. As a web developer, one of the things that I'm proud to say that I worked on was on Techeiles website properties, and one of which was an online version of Rabbi Dr. Herzog's doctoral thesis, and it's on porphyrourology.com. I worked alongside Baruch Sermon, and he was able to enter a letter of recommendation on my behalf and on behalf of everybody else that helped on this not small project. Now about today, I'm not trying to convince anyone to do anything they don't want to do. That's number one. Wear it, you don't wear it. This is more so for information. It is Pasha Shach here in Chutz, and one of the biggest topics towards the end of Shlach is the mitzvah of scissors with Techeiles. So that's going to be the main focus. It's going to be more so for information and for no. And you're going to find a lot of cutting edge findings and sources that may or may not have been presented to the general public yet. So we're going to structure this as follows. We're going to start off with the dyeing experiment. Then we're going to run through an overall history of Techeiles. We're going to Then we're going to discuss what is Techeiles and the candidates. We're then going to go through various discussions on string ratio and time methods. There are quite a few. We're going to then conclude the dyeing experiment. It's going to take a few minutes for the dye to set. Then, time permitting, I will field some questions from the audience. So the mitzvah of Techeiles. Daber b'nei Israel b'amart alehem v'asu lehem tzitzis al kampim v'tehem l'dorasam v'nasnu al tzitzis hakanat Techeiles. Right? Hashem tells Moshe, speak to b'nei Israel and tell them to make tzitzis on the kanfei of their clothes, and also to attach a Techeiles, a chuch of Techeiles, string of Techeiles. It's a direct commandment from the Torah, and we see the first reference actually in Parshas Truma, where we see how Techeiles is associated with royalty. Daber b'nei Israel v'kuli Truma v'yischol ish asher yiten l'god k'ruas Truma seva zas Truma asher k'achum meitan zav v'kesef v'choshes Techeiles v'ragman v'slashani v'sheif shezim. So one pasuk after it talks about zav v'kesef v'choshes, precious metals, talks about Techeiles, argaman, and flashani, precious wools. So it's definitely up there in terms of precious wools alongside precious metals. So we're going to start with the dyeing experiment. I'm just going to do a quick overview about what's to be expected. Then I'll pull up a couple of volunteers.
We need to look at exactly what dyes with the snail melt together. The first stage of the dyeing process is to extract the glands and store the dye from the nearest trunculate sea snail by breaking open the shells and extracting the glands one by one. Then we dry them and grind them into a powder. Next, we add hot water. You can see that even after stirring the mixture, the powdered glands sink to the bottom and the water stays completely clear. Of course, the dye molecules are not water soluble. This is what we should expect from a good fast dye, since we don't want the color to wash out. But it poses a major problem, since if the dye won't bond to water, how can we attach it to the wool fibers? We need to trick it chemically. First, to get it to dissolve in water, then edit it in the wool. Finally, turn it to its inert state so it will never wash out. We do this by adding a very strong base, caustic soda. This has two effects. It helps dissolve some of the fats and proteins that are unwanted byproducts we get from the snail. The second and main purpose is to set the pH so that the next chemical can work. This chemical is the most important one, sodium dithionite. It's a very strong reducing agent and allows the dye to bond with water. As you can see, the color of the vat mixture now changes. It's not the blue Techeiles that we want, but at least we can see that something is dissolving in the water. To neutralize the solution by adding mild acid, citric acid will do, so as not to damage the wool. Adding this chemical generates an empowering odor. No wonder it was forbidden to dye in Yerushalayim because of the smell. But as it happens, if it weren't for the incredibly horrible smell, we might never have discovered the secret of Techeiles in modern times. We're now ready to add. And from this stage, we can see that it has to be done. The express purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzit. We'll now leave the dye in the sun for reasons that will become apparent shortly and return to the mystery of Techeiles that we spoke of earlier. At this point, we are ready to take the wool out of the dye solution and expose it to the air where it will undergo oxidation. The transformation of the dye mixture due to sunlight has already taken place. As you can see, the wool slowly changes color to the full sky blue that our tradition had always maintained. The color of Techeiles dyed wool is, as the Rambam states, the color of the clear sky as it appears to the eye. Eretz dyes are also among the most color-fast natural dyes known. Again, as the Rambam states, it remains steadfast in its beauty and will never change. The rediscovery of Techeiles, of its source, the Chilazon, and of the process required to dye wool. Perhaps we can paraphrase the Drash and be grateful to Hashem. Now we no longer have only light. Techeiles has been found.
Okay, so before we go through history, let's bring in a couple of volunteers from the audience who would like to participate in the dyeing experiments. Okay, come on up. Anyone else? Go for it. Go Shalom Aleichem, Shimon. Pleasure. You? So, pleasure. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so going to start. A couple of these speakers. They brought in a couple of die kits. Pick one. Okay, so, right. Okay. Yes, the first thing we are going to do is this kit contains everything that's needed to dye sample of authentic Techeiles wool, including 4 packages of dyeing chemicals, chunk of wool, and plastic stirring rod, and a cup and a beaker. So, and we're also going to need approximately 1 cup of boiling hot water. We have an entire urn here, entire kumkum. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to first open the packet marked A and pour it into the beaker. So. By the way, is everybody able to hear me or? Got it. Yes. Oh, the other side.
Have the boys come around.
Come around. Perfect. Everybody still right? Fantastic. So we're going to take the purple colored packets marked A. Okay. This is the crushed glands of the chilazon, source of the Techeiles dye. Notice the dark purple couple and notice the dark purple color and strong smell. Point it to the beaker. Oh, doesn't smell so bad. Okay, so next one. The Talmud tells us that the chemicals are added. It's called samanin. So the Techeiles color comes exclusively from the snail dye. However, chemicals are necessary for dissolving the snail dye and processing the wool in order to form a strong bond between the dye and wool. So step 2, let's open the packet marked B. Mark the beaker, pour the beaker. This is sodium carbonate, strong base, which helps break down the glands and dissolve the dye. Can everybody see what's going on? It's like, I know that there's. Sorry?
Yellow bag.
Oh, sorry. If you want to here. Yeah. Everybody sees, everybody sees what is going on. Okay, so perfect. So we got A and B. Now we're going to need for some of this boiling hot water, 180 mils into the beaker, containing the contents of the first 2 packets. Then we're going to stir until it dissolves. Okay. that makes sense. Makes it good. Notice by the way that the coarse lines do not really dissolve in the water, but they're standing there. Okay. Okay, so the next step, open the next packet from C and pour it into the beaker with the liquid mixture. That's the green packet. This is sodium diethylate, strong reduced. Notice that the color changes to yellow-green. This shows that the dye has dissolved in the liquid and has undergone reduction. Yes. Okay, that should be sufficient. If you want, bring the papers over here so everybody can see what is going on. The next step is going to be the most fun. Packet C, red packet. Citric acid. This is a mild acid. Right now, what you have is a strongly basic mixture. So the citric acid as it neutralizes the base and prevents the wool from getting damaged, you're going to see it's going to have a soda-like effect. So just watch out. Right there. If you guys want, lift it up. Show everybody. And you can see that it's now glucosate. It's a very yellowish, very faint green. What they say.
Yeah.
I'm social distancing for a reason here.
It's not a pleasant effect.
If you're in Broad Park or Williamsburg, and you're at any of those fish markets, that's you'll kind of get an idea how it smells. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so now we're able to dip the wool into the mixture, but first say Shem Tzvaz Tzitzis. Yes, let's put it in. Make sure it's covered, and just leave it in there, and we'll conclude with the dyeing experiment after the presentation. If we give this a little time to sink in. Okay. Fantastic. Round of applause. All right. So now that we've done the dyeing experiment, let's just do a brief history on in the beginnings, recent past, present, and future. So we start off at 1750 BCE. There were archaeological traces of Murex shells found in the island of Crete in around the time. Archaeologists have found Tel El Amarna tablets that talk about Tekiltu. So that talk about Tekiltu and Argamanu. 1300 BCE, we have the Exodus, we have Yetzias Mitzrayim. One of the things that Israel took after them was Techeiles, Argaman, Shani, as well as Zahav and Kesef. They didn't just come out with all these materials in the desert. And we have conquest of Yeshua where Techeiles still existed. 1200 BCE, there was a Telshik vat of pottery shards that were dated 1200 BCE. We see that the dye stains molecularly are equivalent to dye from Murex snails. This vat reveals an advanced dye industry using Murex snails at that point in time. We also have Neo-Babylonian cuneiform tablets from. We have 8 tablets from 7th century BCE that gives a recipe for the dyeing of lapis-colored wool, or and this tablet is about 75% complete. So while it doesn't give the entire recipe, it definitely talks about Techeiles. Definitely talks about Techeiles and Argamanu. It also talks about throwing a casu plant in the water. So it might be a recipe for Paleolin at those times. We're not 100% certain. But there is, you can see over here, there's Argamanu, there's lapis colored wool. So is that. In 586, we have the Chubur by Srishon. This picture is from a children's book named Abba Gave Me Blue, which is for sale at the back at the end. We have coins. We have ancient Romans. We have ancient Greek coins that had where there's very clear evidence of York shells on them. Ancient Greek and Roman coins. You can see over here. See over here underneath the eagle. There's a York shell. You can see at the side of this guy's head. There's a York shell, right? And you also see on the right hand side over here. There's shell as well. So so it's very clear evidence that that these shells were highly prized in ancient times. Dice restrictions and imperialization by Roman decrees. So we know that Caesar and Augustus restricted the use of dice to governing classes, and we're going to see it getting stricter and stricter. We see that Nero, because his son Neron, he issued a decree that gave the emperor exclusive right to wear purple garments. See over here, it is even said that I'm noticing a married woman in the audience at one of his recitals, wearing the forbidden color. He pointed her out to his agents, who dragged her out and stripped her there and then, not only of her robes but also her property. And it has to do with extreme purple dyes. And this is, we're going to see that this is directly related to Techeiles, which we're going to see from the process is actually in the class of Tyrian purples. We see from 100 BCE to 424 CE, there were dye restrictions and imperialization by Rome to pay further. You see a reference to Diocletian. He's referred to Techeiles, Malka in Bereshit Rabbah. He's also referred to Shalmi as Diocleans in Yerushalmi about Azara. So he definitely is mentioned. We see that under Constantine, under Constantius Gallus, restrictions against the use of Techeiles was strictly enforced. We see over here in this paragraph, both men were tortured because an unauthorized purple cloak was discovered to have been made of Tyre, which as we know, which by the way, as we know, Tyre is Sar. We know that between that Sar and Sidon were dye centers, Techeiles and Argaman. We also see that Emperor Theodosius Augustus he wrote a letter to Maximinus, the Count of Sacred Imperial Largesses. Promise of gold purple must be surrendered to the treasury. It must be offered. There's no reason why any man should complain about having deprived of the price. It shall suffice that he obtains impunity for the violation of the law. They trampled underfoot. Nor is there any reason why he should have any occasion to worry about profit, since his life not have to be placed at stake. We see there was a special textile that was discovered, that was analyzed by Nama Sukenik. It was discovered at Wadi Murbat, and the dating was circa 132 to 136 CE, which was around the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt. You see that this was very clearly dyed with blue. And when we find further analysis, this blue was dyed with rare structures. Which we're going to get into. And at around 550 CE, we see the last reference to Techeiles. Zupa maracas, Tafshu, Nasher, Yadam, Tvarin, and Panas of the blues. A pair came from Rakas, which Rashi refers to as Tveria, and they panicked, and the people came, and in their hands were items manufactured from blues, and my new Techeiles. This happened to have been Techeiles, the schools for Achmed, some Shalom, because Hashem's mercy is essentially they were able to be in peace, even though they were wearing various things, including Techeiles, and Techeiles seems to have been the reason why they were fought. We see Kodesh Justinian. He was the worst. He also said, no private person shall have the right to dye the silk or wool with colors called blata, oxyblata, and hyacinthina. And we also know that hyacinthina and Greek word yakinthos, those are actually the word yakinthos is a direct translation in the Septuagint to the word Techeiles. So when it says Haknat Sel Techeiles in the Septuagint, that the it actually says Yakinthos instead. So there's that. At around 636 and 638 CE, we see the device of the dye industry, the Arab conquest of Israel. I think it was by the Rashid Caliphate. It is believed that they ended the snail source dyeing industry in Israel. At 750 CE, we have a negative mention of Jews now wearing Techeiles, Midrash and Chuma limits, and now we no longer have Techeiles, only Lafa. In 850 CE, they're actually, even though the Midrash and Chuma writes that, we also have positive mention to Techeiles, because Atronai Gaon, supported by Ravat, to have actually tied Techeiles. Ravat actually writes his commentary to the Mishnah Torah. Gaon Rav Atronai is a front of the Bracha Sidur so Yafeh Sidur Na. God, Al Derech She'Hashem HaHalacha. God, Rav Natronai is in front of the bracha. He arranges scissors like this beautifully. A very beautiful statement on the way that the halacha stated, which was according to the Ravat's sheet of time. We have the last Jewish mention of Techeiles' existence at the Ramban's time. Because the Ramban, he actually writes on Shemos that Techeiles Gam Hayam Goyim Ish. And the Techeiles even today, meaning the 1200s, when the Ramban was alive, he was alive 1194 till 1270. He wrote that the Melech HaGoyim was allowed to wear Techeiles, nobody else. So the fact that the Melech HaGoyim wore Techeiles, that seems to imply that Techeiles was still very much in existence. And if it was Techeiles, it must have very well been Shrunkus. So I have a question about that. What exactly is Melech HaGoyim? Was it a religious leader or emperor? We see another reference to Melech HaGoyim in Bereshis. We have the pasuk translated. Now it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, Shinar, Arioch, the king of Elasar, Omer, the king of Elam, and Tidal, the king of Melech HaGoyim. So Rashi says that Goyim was the actual name of the nation, but the Ramban writes this is a Melech who over different people were placed over them as their head and officer. Alluded to Melech Rami, but there could have been possible cases. So I have three possible potential candidates here, and we don't know for certain because it's hundreds of years later. But one possible candidate was the Pope. The Pope, besides wearing the traditional red and white, he also always wore other robes, including robes for certain occasions, purple robes. There's this other reference. I just mentioned the caveat after that. That paintings don't really prove anything. It's more so on the interpretation of painters. So this is not actual proof that the color you're seeing is Techeiles. It could also be an arbitrary interpretation. But this is also supposed to be This is supposed to be what we know and what we have available to us and what the color might have actually been projected as. So candidate one was the Pope. Candidate two was the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Frederick II. Here you have another painting, and he's very clearly wearing robes. Third potential candidate. This may or may not have been it, but it's one of my personal favorites. We know that the Ramban, he didn't live in Spain. He actually lived in an ancient kingdom called Aragon. Aragon was not just a kingdom; it was actually a crown. So it was a crown that actually had that covered many different kingdoms across the Mediterranean, as you see over here. The Ramban lived in Aragon proper, but you have other empires that were under the same crown. And we have pictures, and we have paintings, as I mentioned before, not proof, but still it's amazing. We have pictures of King James I, wearing robes and purple robes. And what's fascinating is that these shades of blue and these shades of purple actually match exactly the color range of the. So in 1453, we see that there was a siege of Constantinople, and that officially brought the end of the dye industry. Constantinople was the absolute last bastion of where Techeiles dyeing was done, and we see from mid 700s further, Techeiles did exist, but it was incredibly rare. So just because it was in existence doesn't necessarily mean that we Jews had direct access to it. It seems like the Rav that Rav Nachronai was an outlier. So in 1500 to 1681, there was early research on mollusc dyes. We on Rondelay, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. He was the first to identify Pliny's report with Chinerus Canaris. And we see also that time research suggests that Björk was utilized in the Asian dyeing process. Here it's fascinating that in the book of woodcut images, you have a Hirschneck over here, which have the Hirschneck. You also happen to have a Janthina, which is Rafi Herzog's candidate, but all that Fabius wrote on the Janthina was that it was a fascinating style. Didn't elaborate further. This was the guy for the purples that the royalty wore. Okay. From 1684 to 1736, there were various dyeing discoveries. William Cole in 1640 he identified purple dyeing on the coast of Ireland. There was Remora in 1711 who found that purchase color develops due to a change in temperature, and Duhamel in 1736 he found that a compound of the preferges was light sensitive. So we've seen this. At around 1815 to 1833, and as well as 1857, we see a couple of independent people they also discovered color process. Bartolomeo Vizio, who Rabbi Herzog quotes extensively, he wrote about extracting gluten, and really that is the reason Rabbi Herzog even entertained Björk Strunkeles as candidates. Henry Lacaze de Dutier, he supposedly was on a boat, and he discovered fishermen turning the dye sack from Björk shells to various shades of purple on their clothes. Okay. In 1858, and this is very important because a lot of times people assume that the Radzina Rebbe first come up with the cuttlefish. Not necessarily. So Rabbi Dr. Ludwig Yehuda Lewis, who he had a PhD in Orientalia. He published probably the first Talmud zoology Talmud dictionary to the dictionary or encyclopedia in 1858. This was about 130 years before Slivkin. Rabbi Lewison writes, he actually writes 3 entries, but he wasn't for Techeiles as a cuttlefish. And his basis was the cuttlefish ink is black, and Rambam writes that the blood is black. That was his reasoning. The purple speck is a purple chilazim that was supposedly used for the dye test, in the Gemara. And he writes that the muscle is a third chilazon, because there's a Gemara that talks about mishkadecha when it comes to treatment for hemorrhoids. The thing is that whether or not he died with any of them is highly speculative. And what's also interesting is that Ptolemy of Vizio, he already found a way to extract glue from your Techeiles. So it's also highly unlikely that he had any communication with his stuff. He also threw in a possible interpretation for the Greek word oliporphyrin that comes from olos, split, as opposed to a more obvious translation, which basically means all porphyrin, all purple, all blue purple. So we have another one. Alexander von Huth. If you notice, Rabbi Lewison did not always wear yarmulke. Rabbi Huth also did not always wear yarmulke. That was a very common theme in certain parts of Europe, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and a bunch of other places. Don't be too scared. And he quotes Lewison over here in one of the tin fish, which was the Scipia, the official term for the cuttlefish. He also mentions the mussel as other candidates. Now, these two came before the Razina Rebbe. Where the Razina Rebbe was an absolute genius. And he also came up with a cuttlefish, which I'm going to talk about in 1 second. But he happened to have been a master of Seder Taros, and what we have in our possessions today are a couple of volumes in Olos and Kalim, both of which do not exist in Shas. We have the Gemara is essentially an elaboration of the Mishnah, and we have two versions. We have the Talmud Bavli and the Talmud Yerushalmi. There were some acceptors that did not make the list, and pretty much everything in Torah is deep mystery. So the Razina Rebbe he came out with a couple of volumes. Rumor has it that he did the entire Seder Taros, but only 2 survived past the war, and it was done in such a convincing manner that Romans by the time were concerned that it would look like an exact Mars. Published above it that it's as Sefer Siddur Taros, and then afterwards up here, this is showing that this is for a compendium of all the sources from the Rhine that he put together in his own format. It just happens to look like a Gemara, and that's what scared them. It was done in such a convincing manner. So he actually took it as a badge of honor that he had to write something above and below the pages to make the difference. And he happened to have proposed the sepia cuttlefish, but as we've seen before, Rabbi Lewison came before, Rabbi Wood came before, and Razin Rebbe does not spell out where he got his sources from. But there was definitely precedent for the sepia cuttlefish. It was not the first. He was identifying the simanim in Sefer Story before he actually ended up going to Naples, Italy, went to an aquarium, and then was trying to find his Chilazon candidates. Rabbi Herzog, Rabbi Dr. Yitzhak Isaac Halevi Herzog in 1913, he went for a doctorate for the Techeiles and Radamandais. His research thesis was called porphyrology, and he had 3 issues with the cuttlefish. One, not all chilazons refer to Techeiles, right? As we find out, kind of later on, there are different types. There are different species of snails. Some do reddish purple, some do bluish purple, some do in between. The body is not, the gufu is not domiliam. It's not, the body is not similar to the sea. And last thing is that it's been scientifically proven to produce a synthetic compound known as Prussian blue. And Rabbi Herzog himself didn't interpret this alone. He actually sent letters to a couple of independent chemists. And this is one of the letters. You see exactly, it says, we have tested the sample will furnished and find it is dyed with Prussian blue. So that was an immediate discount because it was no longer Techeiles, which according to the Rambam is not Techeiles. It's not possible for Techeiles. So his favorite candidate, in all honesty, was the Janthina snail. As you can see, he rejected the Murex because first of all, it was not the same color as the sea. As you can see, it's whitish brown. But Charles mentioned that he also likely never saw a live specimen of Thornhill, which has various algae and sea fouls, which camouflage the sail very, very well, so that you can't differentiate between them and the seabed. We're going to get into that in a second. Archaeological evidence was not complete for Techeiles for other dyes, and he was particularly looking for blue only and not. Herzog loved the Janthina for the following reason: the body is blue, for yam. It washes up on the shores. Blood is blue purple. As you can see. The problem was that there was no archaeological evidence for dyeing blue, and not only that, as we can see from pictures, it was not able to get a lasting dye. What is interesting though is that while Rabbi Herzog discounted the Techeiles, we have a picture of a newspaper from a couple of months after Rabbi Herzog was nifter, showing that Rasin Chassid stole Rabbi Herzog's Techeiles talus. So he actually owned a talus with Rasin Techeiles, even though he may not necessarily felt of it. Whether or not he wore it privately, nobody knows. But just side here says Kasher food from Techeiles. In 1969, Dr. Yisrael Irving Siderman, from dye chemist who lives in Shorish, Israel, he was approached by Encyclopedia Talmudica to summarize Rabbi Herzog's doctoral thesis, and he got very interested. He approached Haifa University in the 1970s for live sea snails and conducted experiments. He was definitely in communication with them. He claimed, there were some. I spoke with some people about that back in the 1970s. People were talking about Techeiles. They're basically calling the whole person Narishkeit. But you're going to see it wasn't such Narishkeit. He claims credit for the discovery of the existence of high levels of monobromo indigo in the Murex. Monobromo indigo is going to find out is the X factor for identifying Techeiles versus Kali-Elan, which is pure indigo. In 1984, he founded the initial Machona Techeiles, which was a precursor for Techeiles as we know today. And he happens to be a very major advocate for the heating process, which involves boiling as opposed to sunlight. But as we're going to see, it's already been proved. Boiling is one way to make Techeiles, and dyeing and sunlight dyeing. Sunlight is another way of dyeing Techeiles. So it's very possible that the heat from the sunlight could be cause of it, or they were two different ways. There's actually 7 ways to make Techeiles, and they're all 100% kosher. Here, 1980 to 1985, Professor Otto Elsner and Eo Spanier, right? One was a dye chemist and one was a biologist. They conduct research on the Murex family, and the primary colors they initially produced were purple. So they found that blue dye in rare occasions were extracted from the trunculus before 1985, but it wasn't consistent. Rabbi Elio Tavgar and his father-in-law, Rabbi Elio Kauf, they approached professors Elsner and Spanier at Schenker College of Textiles to make a permanent blue. It was the Department of Ancient Dyes and Textiles. The story goes that Professor Elsner tested it on a windowsill, and it seems to have been based on partially from the light sensitivity theory proven by Duhamel in the 1700s, and partially due to the immense stench. One version I've heard was that that the other dye chemists, they couldn't stand the smells. Found out that it's an obscene stench. And so they asked him to take his work outside. Another version that I heard was that he was working at home that day and Mrs. Elsner couldn't stand the stench. Whatever version. At any rate, he found that chemicals added with sunlight exposure turns the light from violet to blue. See this here. But he also was put to admit, and I extracted this from his paper, solution of the enigmas of dye cherry purple and biblical Techeiles. What is this, the biblical Techeiles? He says this is our way of producing the Techeiles color. But whether it's biblical Techeiles or not, we're going to be. Yes. So here's the thing. What was discovered is that we've seen that sodium carbonate, sodium methionate, those have certain chemical properties, and we see that the materials that we use in ancient times, like alum, those were also very strong use agents, and they had very similar chemical effects. So what we found out from like Dr. Schultz-Eiderman, found from Otto Elsner, from Spanier, is that they were able to basically replicate the chemical process. They were able to make it a lot more efficient, such that we're able to conclude the dyeing experiment today instead of waiting 6 to 10 business days, which is what they would have had to do, what they would have had to have done 2,000 years ago.
So you're saying they had the chemicals, just a different source.
Exactly.
Today we have it in a different source that's fast.
Exactly.
We had it here, we had it here, but the chemicals exist.
Exactly. Is that what just like the meeting was saying? So that's why I said this is our way of doing it. Works. We're going to let the rabbis decide. And what we found is that the dye from your trunculus snail contains three different dye molecules. This is partially thanks to Dr. Zeiderman. We have there's 3 components. There's dibromo indigo, there's monochrome indigo, and then there's plain indigo, which is exactly the same color range. And we see over here that with this purple, some say this is argamon, some say that this actually is another shade of Techeiles, but more so concentrated of Stronculus. But our target color is blue. See over here that there's a high amount of dibromo indigo, even an amount of monochrome indigo, and then there's a even lesser amount of indigo. When either sunlight or the boiling process after the purple factor is done, we see that the ratio of regular indigo to monochrome indigo, dibromo indigo completely changes, so that you still have trace amounts of these two, but indigo is a dominant color and gorgeous blue. In 1988 to 1993, we see that Rabbi Eli Tucker, he recruited Baruch Sturman, Joel Goodman, and Ari Greenspan as scuba divers from New York Street to the sea snails. I know that Sturman has worked with me for many years as a programmer. That's one of the things that don't know. Techeiles has taken this in the past 30 years, taken over his life. So they also worked on perfecting the process that's halachically permissible for opinions. And I think Big Skama is Rabbi Schefter of YU. He was the first well-known American posek to take on the mitzvah of Techeiles, and he is still like this. And we say the rest is history. So that part that covers the historical aspect. Techeiles. So now that we covered Techeiles, we covered the dialing experiment. What is Techeiles? Techeiles is mentioned for 49 times throughout Tanakh, 40 in the Torah, and 9 in Tanakh. The most famous one is we see Megillah Esther every year. Mordechai Yitzhak, Melech, Baruch Malchus, Techeiles, Bechur, V'Asher Sahab, Sahab Dolav, Tachribut, Shrakman, V'Savir, Shashan, Salah, V'Samech. And we see over here that there are 34 times mentioned in Shlos. It's mentioned 9 times in. It's mentioned 6 times in Bamidbar. It's mentioned 3 times. Three times in Devrei Yama. It's mentioned 2 times in Belsesser. Right in the beginning, when it talks about the step. And then afterwards, have one time in Vimeo, have 2 times in Yecheskel. So, as far as the requirements go, in terms of what Chazal says, there's really only 3 main requirements. One is that the source of Techeiles must come from a chilazon, right, sea creature. Another is that Techeiles must produce a bluish color. And the third is that Techeiles must remain strong and not fade over time, right? That's Rambam Hilchos Tzitzus. No other requirements are mentioned by Chazal or the Rishonim for kosher Techeiles. So requirement 1, what is a chilazon? So the first reference to a chilazon, many people wonder, is it mentioned in the Torah? The answer is no. And what's even better is that does not seem to be a Lashon HaKodesh term. However, it is mentioned in this Kalim. It actually talks about a chilazon, being used in the shape of a certain chain. That if the chain has a couple of things to it, then it actually could be not an actual chilazon. It's more so a chilazon shaped extension to the chain. Chain being metal. Metal is susceptible to tuma. That's the first reference to chilazon that we have. We also have the Rambam. Techeiles is not kosher except for chilazon. It's not kosher for chilazon. It is possible as far as Techeiles goes. Not for chilazon. And even Rambam Parish Mishnais, he writes this chilazon is a small type of block piece. This shell is the same shape of a sea creature. Called chilazon. We actually discovered this before. Rambam actually elaborates that. Yes.
You have a lot more material at later time.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could jump to some of the issues of controversy, halacha, why they're still in debate today.
Yes.
Whether or not to put on the
That's-
maybe the difference is
Yes.
in the next.
It's not a problem. Okay. So we see a whole bunch of values cognates. So we have over here a lot of references to class, which we have Arabic references Arabic one. You'll see in a minute.
We also find the word chilazon even today, meaning snail, in Middle Eastern languages, such as Aramaic and Arabic.
Halzon. 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 That's the word. Halzon is the whole thing in it. When it's without, it's called salad.
So we see that it's a reference. That there's reference in Arabic. It's reference in Aramaic. It's reference in Farsi. in a number of Eastern and Eastern languages, I'm not saying Semitic languages, but Eastern languages. Farsi is a Indo-European language. We see that it has that's from the shell, especially since we're from the Brahman, he writes he has crushing. I don't know if we have time for video on this. So this you're seeing over here is points by Ram Ben Aram. You see that they're opening the shell. Don't see over here. So that basically covers that dissect is where the tail's blood comes from. As you can see, there's major interpretations for how the color black furnishings to the Rambam. So fine. So we see the Chilazon goes Gufadom Liyam. So sorry, so this goes Gufadom to Liyam. For example, the fish, in which and with its blood one dies with thread, therefore blood is expensive. We have to understand that the scriptures are made in context. We have, for example, the lulav. We have a bar that talks about a deep palm. The deep palm has only a heart, like Israel has a heart. Deep palm does not literally have a heart. We also have an esrog. We have the nose of an esrog. It has to do with whether or not chazazes, scab-like protuberance, basically made of two bushes, is on its nose. If it is, it's possible. Esrog doesn't have a nose. Hadassah has changed. It does not have a chain. That's the chain length. So we have to realize that descriptions are made in context. And chilazon, when it's mentioned, gufadom liyam, jam dom lerakit, and kids don't it's like that. Second thing, requirements that it's supposed to produce a color, and we see lots of references for Shashal for Hirsch, the Prima Garden, or Mak, or Bam, Barshnura, the Vaz, Shulchan, Marakanan, Bereshchaich, Tuni Plan, Moshe. They all are saying that it's supposed to describe. Right, happen also. Bracha. Primary 3 is that it should not change. Rambam writes that fails as a mid yafia, and the issue is Kalilan. So Kalilan is essentially any plant. There's two plants that are out there. There's indigo ferritintora in India that's much stronger blue, and there's also Isatis woad, which corn is used to Israel, and that actually is a relatively low concentration of blue, but it's enough to fool the average consumer. So the chuvas are going that in Arabic it is called meal. So we see that. So we see that meal indigo is colors. So the thing is that meal is actually directly connected to woad. The Rambam writes istis for the Chassidus. Istis is indigenous, as mentioned. Biochemical strategy is indigo, lower concentration. And in Chinese, even today the word land means blue. So in Chinese, Rabbi Herzog suggested a number of possibilities explaining the origins of the term Kala. Kala in Sanskrit means black or deep blue, and Nilam is indigo. Similar to the Arabic Nil, Kalilan may mean the Kala dried from trees, and perhaps a corruption of Kalanil. It's a theory that's out there. This picture was actually taken from a video called Quest for the Lost Tribes, where Haman and Asher were found out, and they were found to have scales or blue on their talis. So as far as the behavior of the candidates goes, the quick 1 minute video. And go about it. Okay, so cuttlefish is a fish or similar to one, similar to a fish, but not exactly a fish. In Chazal's terms, all sea life is referred to fish and the spuds. We know that the blood is black like ink according to Rambam. The issue is that it was rejected by big Gedolim of their time, the Chafetz Chaim, the Shulchan, so Shmuel Salant, and Shulchan Lubavitch were for example told that rejected the cuttlefish Techeiles. There were those that had zero opinion. Rabbi Yeshua like Diskin, Maral Diskin, he was no opinion. Rabbi Yisrael Elchanan Inspector, who she was his Elchanan in YU, named after. Rabbi Herschel Schachter, he mentioned that for the Rabbi Spector, his excuse was, well, he was fighting reform. He did not want to reform movement to start making fun of him because he's changing his traditions and he's making fun of the reform for not doing their own traditions. Rabbi Herschel Schachter, though, adds that Kosh Rafi did not command him to fight reform, commanded him to wear Techeiles, leading it up. More privately, we have a few Gedolim for the Marsham. He not only Marsham with Marsham word, the late Ha'ivri, Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger word, Itzchak Panovitcher. He was somebody who actually wanted to be very Techeiles. Rabbi Chaim Berlin, he also worked privately, supposedly from the Rebbe, and Rabbi Chaim Ozer Gudzinski.
What were the cuttlefish?
Yes, there's wrong. No. Okay.
I think the point that all of these developers recognize that put on the wrong.
There's no gas. Exactly. Exactly. That's now here's the thing. What's Techeiles without wrestling? Right? Only one, the fact of the matter is it's not so simple. Only 1 out of 5 groups actually hold the Resin Techeiles in Breslov. Rabbi Avram ben Nachman Halili Chazan Torshin. He actually had a very special sefer in Breslov called Gilas Harim, Book of Secrets, that was only passed down to 2 Breslovers every generation. He was one of those 2 in that generation, and he had an affinity with the Resin Rebbe at the time, Rabbi Gershon Lyman. And he actually showed that when Rabbi Leiner was complaining to him that everybody was against him, he said, "Wait a second, it's a predictions from our special book from the 1700s, and that in the year Tarpach in 1888, Techeiles will be discovered, will be revealed, and all the Gedolim are going to reject." So that's one group. That's one group that took it on. One rest of the group accused Rabbi Gershon Leiner's son of changing the process, and that group stopped wearing it. That reason. Well, years later, Rabbi Yisrael Halpern Haledi Karduner, he had a dream that he birthed the image of Nachman. He asked him the dream if he wore Techeiles. The answer was Lavdafka. So whatever you do is all good. So we know scientifically the problem is that Russian blue is made of ferric cyanide, iron cyanide. The source of the blue actually comes from iron filings mixed with any I mean, which mixed with any protein source. It could be cuttlefishing, the article could be gefilte fish. It's also mixed with potassium carbonate, cream tartar, sulfuric acid, and a lot of heat. This is the chemical formula. I am not going to attempt to interpret it, but basically see here that a lot of iron. Ferroni in the sea is a chemical symbol for iron. Which we see that potassium is added, and you end up with formula for Prussian blue. I don't know if I'm gonna have the time for this, like 5 minutes long, so we can pass by this. But what should be known is that just because any source can be fluid doesn't mean it's kosher for Techeiles. So just gonna run through a couple quick videos.
I've heard people, talking about the Prussian blue and everything. The Bible said we should use the blue that's coming from this fish. It had its reason, right? If it could be done from something else, does that prove that this wasn't used?
Just because you can get it from something else doesn't mean, it doesn't invalidate.
The cuttlefish, right? Because I would give you an example. There is alcohol that is derived from wheat. There's alcohol derived from grapes. Now, if you would drink alcohol on Passover from wheat, it is a sin. But if you drink alcohol that comes from grapes, from fruit, from citrus, it's 100% okay. Our Bible, chemically, they are the same content, same alcohol. If you put it through a chemist, I don't think you'll be able to make a difference between A and B. Just the Torah, we do not understand it. Everything is questioned from where it comes.
Okay, so the second issue is that there is no literary or archaeological evidence. Nobody's seen anything from 2,000 years ago on the cuttlefish. The problem is the answer to that is the absence of evidence. It's not necessarily the evidence of absence.
Very fishy. It's a fishy story, this one.
How did the rest? Is there something that smells a little fishy about the Redzinger's cuttlefish theory? On one hand, the cuttlefish meets most of the ancient criteria. On the other hand,
The archaeologists dug along the coast and they found vast amount of shells of the Murex trunculus. So people say, look, if the Redziner Rebbe was alive today, he would look and say, look, oh, oops, I goofed. I made a mistake, because if I was right, they would have found vast amounts of the soft shell of the cuttlefish. They didn't find it. They found the trunculus.
If I would find on those shells that I found a sign written, this was Techeiles. Okay, but there were other dyes and other colors being dyed through those years. The Romans were there. They had vast use factories.
by the way, the Techeiles is used only for one thread, and this type of murex was used to dye entire garments from head to toe for the nobility, of course. That's why you needed huge amounts of shells. That's why they found those kind of shells.
Could be, if you would check other sites, other places, you'd find what we're using. That archaeology is very nice. It could help you, give you a clue. But to say that what I found is Techeiles and that was used as Techeiles, who says? Nobody said that was Techeiles. Maybe that was alkaman, maybe it was purple. Somebody reminded me of a joke that we used to have cellular phones 2,000 years ago. How do you know? He says, I have proof. How do you have? I did not find any telephone lines. We're digging, no telephone lines were found in all these archaeological sites. So they surely use a cellular phone. Isn't that a good proof? Right?
That's good. That's very good.
There is no archaeological evidence supporting the cuttlefish. No 2,000-year-old cuttlefish shells. But as Yitzhak just pointed out, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
So problem 3, it can run. These are my fingers. I've actually tried cuttlefish tests for a couple of people. This is the result. When I was student for not wearing gloves, when I was smart for wearing gloves, I took pictures and I took the final results. It runs. Maybe we have an issue. Some defense, some don't run as much. Another one of my fingers, and this was lighter. Over here you see somebody was in Techeiles on a certain road, running a little bit, but not as much. You see that the color has not faded, which leads to the next cuttlefish problem number 4. It can fade. Somebody asked me wants to change there's swings for Techeiles to Techeiles. I shared pictures. See that his Techeiles turn very faded blue, pearl white. And here, this is not this the set that I toyed around with. Here you see there's time. Here I've untied it once, then tried retying it to tie the folios. The color. So it's a low defense. Some can last a while, especially if treated beforehand. So we see over here that this was something Sean styles that lasted a number of years before he switched over to Techeiles. We see over here that this one, somebody claims that he wore this for 26 years. And what he also did is he treated it beforehand with vinegar, maybe a little bit of salt, mixed with water. 24 hours apparently this works wonders. I have not tried it yet.
Take another 5 minutes.
Yes.
And then why some was.
Yes. So reverse odds, yes. So reverse odds research from the Athena. He loved this because it's all blue. Blue shell, blue blood, and see the dyeing process over here. The biggest problem is that it fades, like almost immediately. This is probably the first specimen of Techeiles that I've ever seen. Gorgeous blue, it's exposed to sunlight, and it turns into a very dull gray. And then the other fish.
That's the third fish, that little shellfish.
What?
Cuttlefish was,
No, this is Japanese.
this is the third thing, that little purple.
No, this is
Yes.
this is it. Gorgeous until it isn't. So what are some reasons to support the trunculus? It's in the right location, Mediterranean, just like the other candidates. It has a violet blue. It actually does produce a violet blue color as opposed to the red of the other New York snails. And it actually that dye is actually better when taken from the live scale. When it's snails kill, almost immediately the quality of the dye degrades. So it's similar to C. C can refer to C bed. And we actually have a couple of we have with Cheyenne, Cook, apologize for having this to see. Phrases to Cook, but we see Cheyenne Kamaim Yam Chasim as water covers the sea bed. And from Habakkuk, we see it says that's the Makami Chasu al Hayam, just as the water covers the sea bed. The water doesn't cover the sea, though, that would just not translate well at all. Those are fish terms, so similar to a fish, but not a fish. All sea life is referred to a fish in Chazal, narrow both ends and wide in the middle. So that's actually we're sold both Rashi's Suras Chilazon. See that it makes a beautiful 2D shape of fish. And this is unique to all other marine snails that actually do dive. None of the rest look like a fish. Blood shofar kidyo. So sorry. So we know that when it says something like something, it's not 100% like that. So it's not 100% black, but this is a very dark color. And as we see, as we see the Kesef Mishnah, he actually mentioned that the Rambam is not an exact quote from Nachos, even though his style of Mishnah is supposed to pattern that. He meant that any dark colors is unacceptable, but lighter colors are acceptable for Lavan. But the main thing is that a contrast between Lavan and darker color is necessary. So that's really what it's down to. And there's a lot of similarities between the New York and the Shilazon, similar dyeing process. Marine colors resemble the bed, strict at the same time in history, cease to be used at the same time. Back in northern Israel, Persia's Porphyra. This is a super color called Yakinthos. Identical to Kalilan, different than indigo, that it will not fade well into the will. These need to extract wildlife. Blood is not circulatory, it has its own sac. Blood is described as black as ink, and we see that's also chemically identical to indigo, C16H10N2O2. So the nurse, so we see that the nurse in Chazal, if we were to put it this way, if we were to find a source of that commonly used in the times Chazal, any Techeiles color garments, we must prove that it's the same dye used for that nurse that was not widely used in the times of Chazal, Techeiles color dye for royalty demonstrates that demonstrates that the same dye was used for texts. And we see Rishon right from the Chilazon itself, Rabbi Yonas Fardi, he was actually precursor. He was in the 900s. He wrote with the Shabbos was Chilazon. He was also a human dictionary. He writes that are similar to the word in the Arabic Zun. See that Rambam he writes that say as a caution kind of not common. Has to have a shell. Ravian Brachos, he basically compares Techeiles and Karti for Farine and for Simin. For Frisinan, possibly known as Greek Kalik, and Frisinan from Spain, Yavrama, and Shabbos. Yeah, similar to Chilazon group. Yeah. Rashi and Chilazon, he actually writes Limsa and he made some places. They means slug or snail. Slug with a shell, slug with snail basically means snails. See over here? We see limaçon means a snail. Whether or not there's a last nun at the end, a last nun at the end, that's subject to debate because in French the last letter, especially when writing Gita, something like that. So we see the base over here. The base is mentioned. We see the mission is referred to a Flavian over here. Supposed to be. We see that son is also the also mentioned by the Radak. We see that the Pharaoh produces. Sorry about that. Second. Sorry. We see that the Pharaoh produces.
But I guess you use it.
So we see that in Greek fear was used. So as mentioned, this is Ravi's interpretation. We also see in Esther Rabbah that Esther Rabbah it actually played for free reign. There is that like Masara. That I think is what everybody's waiting for. Basically, it has one version. The Racine Rebbe has another version. Salvation family says they have positive Masara. Racine Rebbe was like, if it was well known and we weren't using it, then it must be a negative Masara. However, the Mariel writes it feels on east down. We also discuss Techeiles. And also as far as Masara, we have a lot of things that we do today that have nothing to do with Masara. Turkey. Biblical board is very strong. Oriz, according to the Quran, Hazish is Robin, since the Mason Bar, Shekel the Rambam, Shem there are many ways to daven, Shkitanize, Shimatzes. There was big controversy. Who's wearing here some posting the war part of Rabbi Yashin, Goldberg and others. And we see over here, the corruption there. Very proud. Also from the Danny Green, which is part of our important games. It's a legend in Hamilton. And this much larger chart, we definitely say that Techeiles has zero downside. Yes.
There's so much more that I want to invite you to come back to the second presentation.
Please.
On the different ways of finding Techeiles.
Yes.
And the advantages of one over the other.
Sure.
I wish we had more time, but this is such a voluminous amount of information. I know it was difficult to back it. And so we'll invite you to come for a second time, talk about the different ways to tie Techeiles, whether you should have one string, two strings, and all the different sheets. That'll be part 2 of the next lesson.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.